Colorado is headed to the Big 12, Brian. They had, I think, 31.7 million reasons why they might want to jump ship?
Yeah, there's quite a few of them, and I think you and I have been asked about them quite a bit in the last 24 hours. I was kind of joking that we were at Pac-12 Media Day last week, and this has sort of been Brian and Adam Media Day today because I now know how these players feel. I think it's about a dozen radio interviews I've done today. I know you've done a bunch, and just getting the same questions over and over again, like, all right, I know what Media Day feels like for Shedeur and Travis last week, but yeah, you keep getting asked all these questions. Why make this move? It's like 31.7 million reasons, right? Yep. They're guaranteed. They know they're going to get that kind of money in media rights money over the next 6 years, actually starting in 2025, then 6 years after that. Whereas the Pac-12, you just don't know right now, and maybe they get to that level with this new deal. It might be hard now, but maybe they would have, but it doesn't look like they were going to. And so this looks like just certainly security and stability. And Rick George mentioned that stability was a big reason why they made this move.
It's funny, 9 months ago, we were doing a similar analysis video after Carl Durrell got fired, and we looked really tired, Brian. It's been quite the year covering this program, but it's trending in a positive direction for this football program, even for basketball. You look at the competition that Tad Boyle is going to get. Yes, I understand, as I've said on radio, I'm sure you've said this as well, that it's going to be hard for them to win basketball games going forward, but that strength of schedule is going to be amazing for Tad Boyle in that crew. And from the football side of things, I think as things stand right now, as we record this, we don't know what Oregon and Washington are doing behind the scenes, but it seems like the football competition is pretty comparable when you look at what Colorado is going to face in the Big 12 versus what they're going to face in the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at certainly right now, you look at USC, their profile this year looks like they're an elite type of team potentially if they can get their defense figured out. Oregon's kind of been up there. Washington's been up there. But then go to the Big 12, and let's take out Texas and Oklahoma because they won't be there. Oklahoma State, how many times have they won 10 games in the last decade? It's quite a bit with Mike Gundy. Kansas State was a very good team, or has been a very good team. TCU was in the college football playoff last year. I don't expect them to be there this year, but that's a very good football team. And then you have Baylor that's been elite at times over the last decade or so. BYU, we'll see how they do in a Power 5 conference, but they've been elite at times. Houston's been a pretty good team. Central Florida's been a pretty good team. So I feel like even the middle of that conference is maybe better than the middle of the Pac-12.
I try to be fair, Brian, and I've been harsh on Phil DiStefano in the past. He just is not a very good public speaker, and even today, it just is not his strength as a human being, which is fine. Like, we all have our strengths, and he certainly got his because he's gotten his job as the chancellor at CU for a very long time. I was like, wow, Phil DiStefano brought it today. He actually seemed to make sense out there in the press conference that we just came from. And the biggest thing was that the academic research is not going to end in terms of partnership with other institutions. And I think that's one part of it that I wasn't fully educated on going into this whole conference realignment madness way back. You're talking, 13, 14 years ago now for Colorado. At that point, I thought the AA institution thing meant a whole lot. The more I've talked to people, it doesn't. It seems like a bunch of old guys hanging out in a club. It doesn't seem like it's actually something that matters really in this universe for folks in for college football, really. In Colorado moving, again, it feels like I'm just kind of speaking the company line here, but sometimes in these stories, you don't dig a lot as a journalist until you really get pushed to find out. And it seems like the academic side of things with the Pac-12 was overblown.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, you and I were talking before, it's like, it's not like there's dumb people that are working at these other universities too. You can still collaborate with Washington and Oregon and Cal, things like that, but you could also collaborate with people at Cincinnati and Houston and things like that. There's probably some smart people working academically at those places as well. So yeah. And bottom line, these moves, say as much as you want about academics, they are about football. They are about athletics, and that's what people look at. the academic people don't care if you're in the Pac-12 or the Big 12, right? They're looking at academic things. But as far as the Big 12, this is a move that's all about athletics, and it's about money for one. Rick George and Phil DeStefano talked about the student-athlete experience. They've done some research and said that they believe this is going to be better for the student-athletes as far as better game time, so where they'd much rather play 7 p.m. Central or Eastern than 7 p.m. Pacific. That's a much different travel experience for those kids in the Big 12 than is the Pac-12. You also look at some of these trips are going to be shorter. I remember my first year covering this program was the last year of the Big 12, and I drove to 2 of the games. You can't drive to anything in the Pac-12, and
It depends on like your stamina driving away.
Yeah. But they weren't long. I mean, it's an 8-hour drive to Lincoln. I know they're not in the conference anymore, but it was like an 8-hour drive to Kansas, and K-State's not that far. They're drivable, as opposed there's nothing drivable in the Pac-12 conference. So it is much shorter trips.
It's hard to say exactly how the rest of the Pac-12 is going to shake out now going forward. Yeah. I think if Arizona jumps ship, and I don't want to date this video too much, but if Arizona jumps ship, the Pac-12 is in real peril. That's kind of where my eyes are right now. What about you?
Yeah, Arizona is the first team I would look at, as well as Oregon and Washington. I mean, those are the two, I think, big fish in the conference. Obviously, that you got to wonder what they're going to do at this point. And if I'm the Big 12. Those are the 3 I'm looking at. I want Arizona for the basketball side of things. I think Arizona's been wanting the Big 12. If I'm the Big 12, I want Oregon and Washington, because those are the 2 biggest brands left in the Pac-12. Everybody else, it's like whatever. if they want to come and you feel like it's a fit, great. If not, oh well. And those other 6 teams, if they rebrand themselves and grab some other teams that join them, that's great. But if I'm the Big 12, there's only 3 teams I'm really looking at. I don't know about only, but those are the first 3.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Arizona State, from what I've heard from people, is going to be the last of those 4 corner schools to jump ship because they want to be in the Pac-10. Like that's their history, which makes sense. And it also makes sense for the CU Buffaloes to have that history in the Big 12, even though it looks a whole lot different now than it did when you last left the conference. Brian, just to finish up here, what is left for Colorado in terms of the future? I think right now you look at the next 7 years and say, okay, Colorado's going to be a member of the Big 12. But what I've heard all along is that Colorado is going to do this move to try to set itself up for the next move of college football shakeups, which we don't know when that's going to happen, but you've got a media rights deal with the Big 12 now that starts in 2025, goes 6 years beyond that. After that, who knows what college football is going to look like?
Well, yeah, and if you're Colorado, all the moves they've made in the last 9 months have got to be geared toward the future. And you bring in Coach Prime, obviously, that really elevates the program and the brand, right? You're hoping it elevates the football team as well. No, it doesn't matter how long he's here. Well, it does. But, I mean, let's say he's only here 2-3 years, but you've elevated the football program and the brand, and now you're in a conference with more stability. You're a much more attractive team at that point. And I know I'm putting everything way ahead of things, but let's just say 2-3 years from now, he decides to move on. You're more attractive. You get a better head coach, and you keep moving. You keep your program progressing. And then when the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the SEC come looking to expand again, like, oh, wow, Colorado's actually looking pretty good. So I think a lot of it is that if you don't make a big splash hire like Coach Prime, I'm not sure you're in this position right now today.
$31.7 million coming Colorado's way beginning in 2025. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've been asked a lot. I'm sure you have on the radio as well, in terms of what Coach Prime's influence was in terms of this. And I've kind of downplayed that a little bit based on what I've heard. I think that when you look at Colorado sitting there, okay, what are we going to do for the future? You start doing that pros and cons, whether it's on a board or in your head. You're putting things together, and when Coach Prime says, or doesn't even say, but he's recruiting Texas and Florida, that's going to put another ledger in the pros con column for the Big 12 and Colorado going there. But I don't think that's the reason that Colorado's jumping ship. I think this is on, again, blame pie, throw it in Larry Scott's face. I think George Kliavkoff has been handed a really difficult deck, and he hasn't done well with that hand. Yeah. But I don't blame him.
Yeah, I blame him a little bit, but I put most of it on Larry Scott. And I agree with you on the Coach Prime thing. I've downplayed it too, and Rick George sort of did as well. Like look, it's I talked to my head coaches, but we certainly what we're doing is going to benefit what his profile is, and you get that. And so you want to do things that set up your coaches for success, and certainly playing games in Houston and TCU, things like that. That's going to
UCF,
UCF,
if
right.
Coach Prime is here long term.
Right. And even if he's not, I mean, Florida's got a ton of really good athletes. And so whether it's Coach Prime or somebody else, you want to recruit Florida and you want to be down in there. You want to be down in Texas. And so, that when Colorado's been good at football, it's Texas players a lot of times. California as well. But Texas is a big part of what Colorado's past has been. And so I think it sets them up. I don't necessarily think Coach Prime went in there and said, we need to get in the Big 12, go make it happen. But I think that, you look at those things like you said and say, this could maybe help him.
Yeah. It feels like in the last 13 months, it's shifted a few times.
Yeah.
And we were at Pac-12 Media Day. We got to be fully transparent. At least I said on this analysis video that, hey, right now you put a gun to my head. I think Colorado's going to stay in the Pac-12. Mm-hmm. It just goes to show you how quickly these things go about. And Rick George, man, I love it if he just called you and I during these coaching searches or conference realignment situations and say, hey, Brian, Adam, report this. He doesn't do that. He is a poker player. He does not. I had to work hard on this one. I don't know about you, but he does a good job of keeping things close to the vest.
Yeah. I mean, I've been asked, when did you know? And I said, yesterday. Literally one of our colleagues out at Media Day, as we were wrapping up that day, he goes, well, it was his first time being there. He goes, it's kind of cool to come to it was too bad it's the last one. I was like, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's the last Pac-12 Media Day. Well, it is. So, as recently as, less than a week ago, I thought the same thing. I really thought that CU was still going to wind up staying in the Pac-12. I was wrong. They're now moving on, and here we go.
You are in this industry long enough, you're going to be wrong a number of times. It's how you
and I'm okay with that.
It's how you respond to that.
Right,
Look,
yeah.
We're going to be honest and transparent, and that's the key here. Again, the last 13 months have been twists and turns. We spent a lot of time on phone calls that haven't proved anything in terms of reporting standpoint. To have this finalized, we did a video a couple months ago on CU's campus, and we were at least I was really frustrated.
Yeah.
Let's get this figured out. And I don't think Rick George watched that video, but if he did, and it had 1% type of influence on him, then I'll take some credit there, I guess.
Yeah, if Rick George watched that video, then he really is a glutton for punishment because we didn't even want to make the video. But same thing. I mean, there's not a whole lot of stuff that we've known throughout this, and I went to Big 12 Media Day a couple weeks ago, and a lot of people tried to read into that, and even now they're like, "Oh, you must have known something." I didn't know anything. It's just,
hey, Brian, shh, just say that you knew, man.
I know. But really, it was because of all the rumors were so hot that let's just go down there and see what the tenor is. And there was actually, I won't mention who the head coach is, but I was chatting with one of the head coaches and about Coach Prime and everything, and he said, oh, maybe, he goes, I think we might see him here in the future. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And he goes, they're coming here, and he was right. So, and maybe that was the vibe down there, which that's always been the vibe down in the Big 12 country. And Pac-12 was like, no, we're staying together. But it was funny. It was a big time vibe in Dallas a couple weeks ago. Oh yeah, this is just a matter of time. And here we are.
The Pac-12 is a lot of window dressing. It always looks fancy.
Yeah.
Out there in Las Vegas last weekend, it was all of that. It just always feels like, as a media member, when you have your BS meter kind of out there floating around, Pac-12 ain't it.
No, it's not. And, I tweeted this, but, being at both media days the last couple of weeks, the difference is insane. I mean, it's such a football vibe at the Big 12 media days. And it certainly helps that it was held at AT&T Stadium. You're in a football stadium, and so literally media press row is on the field where the Cowboys play. But, I mean, there's 4 or 5 players from every team. There's cheerleaders. There's mascots. I mean, every team had its own station set up for media to go walk up and talk to the head coach and the players. Yeah. Then you go to Pac-12 Media Day, and it's all one day. Big 12 is 2. Media Day at Pac-12 was all one day. It's crammed into one thing. And you were there. the station for like the one-on-one interviews was the same table. Everybody just kind of rotated through. Yeah. It's like, all right, Charles Kelly, come do your thing. Shooter and Travis, do your thing. All right, next team. And there's 2 players each, and it was just kind of, let's get this done. And the other big difference was the Old Trapper beef jerky, which at the Big Toe meeting today, the Old Trapper guy was there, like the guy, the Mountaineer guy, and they're giving out beef jerky, and it's the big bags, right?
So if you're like doing the pros and cons list, which I was talking about, is the beef jerky is like the deciding factor for Colorado?
It's the tipping point. So, but here it's a funny one, but I just want to make this point. So the Old Trapper beef jerky. So they're giving the media at Big 12 the big bags, right? The 10-ounce bags. And I go up and get one, and the lady's like, "No, here, take these different flavors." So you get like 3 of these bags of beef jerky, these big bags. And then I noticed at Pac-12 meeting today, they had Old Trapper beef jerky, but it was like the little tiny bags, and it was just some hotel person that's like giving it to you. And so way different vibe as far as the Old Trapper beef jerky. And so if you really want the difference, that's the big difference.
It's a lot different than last October when we were starved for sleep, and we have camp coming around the corner, and I know you planning to take your youngest, to a Rockies game, so we've got a little time to catch our breath before camp starts, but it's kind of a breath of fresh air around here, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I still have beef jerky left, but yeah, you could not have beef jerky left, but yeah, it is a breath of fresh air. And certainly it's different. I do remember doing that video in Tucson, and it was just such they had getting hammered again. And it was, you and I were almost rooting for a blowout that night to just end this thing, just get this over with. Cause there was that vibe that if that happened, this was going to be over. And you kind of we were downtrodden. It's late at night at that point, and and then I remember 2 weeks later, I think it was, or 2 or 3 weeks later, we're at Oregon State, and that was such a miserable experience. And I remember being at Washington the very last game, and we've talked about it before, but I'm the only media person there at the post game, and it's like 59-7, like, what am I doing here? And then all of a sudden, it's the past 9 months have just been amazing. It's still got to play some football games though.
Yep. And we're going to get into fall camp here this coming Wednesday. Brian, get some sleep. We got to refresh a little bit, but you're going to see us a lot during preseason camp, where I wouldn't say 100% right now, but I will be when camp kicks off.
Yeah, this week off should do a lot of wonders for us. The players, they're off for the next week. We're off for the next week. We should be rest up and be ready for camp.
All right. Colorado headed to the Big 12. That's the latest right now. And now let's shift our focus back to actual football.